I think that's all part of the game when you sign up.
Hi, welcome to the SOS Podcast with me, Sucheta, and our guest for today is Anuradda Gupta. She is an entrepreneur, a wife, a mother, and there's so much to learn from her journey being a woman entrepreneur and understand not just how to break glass ceilings, but also to keep your mental health and well-being intact.
For being an entrepreneur, you're also in a lot of ways signing up for all of this, right?
Yes.
It's never a smooth path. It's never easy.
Yeah.
But then you perhaps, you don't want easy. That's the beauty of life, right? That everything is not slotted in.
Yeah.
We have to allow ourselves, we have to give ourselves the time to heal.
Hi Anuradha, welcome to our podcast, the SOS Show, and it's so lovely to have you here and talk about something which is very important and pertinent, which is mental health, relationships, and journey of an entrepreneur. So welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here on this show.
Tell me Anuradha, just start very basic for our listeners so they get to know you better. You're an entrepreneur and you're running multiple companies and you started your journey solo. How was that beginning of it, specifically you being a woman?
I have starting something new, creating something, is always challenging. It always comes with its set of challenges. There are times when you feel a sense of isolation. There are times when you feel certain amount, you can sense the vibe of certain amount of skepticism around you. Not everybody believes in your vision, definitely not as strongly as you do. But I think that's all part of the game. When you sign up for being an entrepreneur, you're also in a lot of ways signing up for all of this, right?
Yes.
It's never a smooth path. It's never easy. But then you perhaps you don't want easy.
Yes. That's a great line. Yeah. You don't want easy. Yes. So when you say you don't want easy, this is also the process that is chiseling you as a person. It is also sculpting you as a human, as a professional, but it comes with a certain amount of, if I might call the light and also the shadow. So what were the shadows? And because we are a mental health awareness podcast and wellness podcast, and your profession plays a huge role in your journey and your mental health, what were some of the challenges as a woman entrepreneur that you faced when it comes to the well-being and mental health space?
I think I believe that as men and women, by nature, we have different strengths, and I think that is the beauty, and I think in today's day and time, the other beauty is that we are all working very hard to create a very level playing field.
Yes.
But having said that, the way we react to things is very different. For example, if my husband has to go out for work, for a week, he has to go because it's work, it's demand of the work of, and he leaves. And there have been numerous occasions being an entrepreneur and setting things up, I have had to be in the same, situation, and he has always supported me, and we've supported each other. But every time I've had to leave, I have felt a sense of guilt sometimes, leaving young children and traveling.
Yes.
So these are the things that I think as women, and it's not a generic statement, maybe not everybody feels like that, but a lot of us do feel that sense of, are we doing right by children, by family, by, at least for me, that came quite naturally. And therefore there were a number of times when, that there was a sense of guilt, there was a sense of, am I following my path, and what is the price that it's coming at, right? So that's always been at the back of my head. But over time, I have learned that you need to have a very strong support structure. That's really because the reality is that none of us as human beings, we are not not meant to thrive in isolation.
Yes.
And so anytime there have been more moments, and many moments, when I found myself very alone,
Yeah.
and even, and I think those are the times when earlier I thought I can figure it all out on my own and let me do this alone. I got it.
Yes.
And then I realized that I actually haven't got it. And things, it was a mess. And then I learned to lean in on people, on friends, on family, on ones close to me.
Yeah.
And that has been mentally, it's been a turning point, at least in my journey. The ability to lean in, the ability to look at somebody else, to reach out for help,
Yes.
to ask for the support, to say, hey, I don't think I can do this on my own.
Yeah.
And that was both very liberating
Yeah.
and equally empowering at the same time.
Yeah. So yeah, that's lovely, Anuradha. That's a great advice in terms of the support, building your support systems, and also support systems where you can lean in, which can specifically become very difficult for a woman whose career, who wants to build companies, who wants to also have a child, also marry to the right man. How was finding the right partner in your journey to be able to support you, and also eventually to be having a family that supports you, because every family is not supporting a woman who is independent and who has got a career? How did you manage that?
I think it was a combination of, I think I have been extremely blessed.
Yeah.
I have to say that. Because like you said, not everybody has that. So I think that is a gift, that is a privilege, it's a blessing, and I don't take that lightly. So finding, for me, it was, I got married later because I was very clear, I will do it, you can live with someone, but I wanted to be with somebody I can't, live without. And so right from the beginning, there were certain things which are very important to me, and I think I did a lot of soul searching because I did not get married very young. I got married in my mid-30s. I got that chance to do some soul searching and really sort of figure myself out somewhat, and think what is important to me. And I think work, career, family, it was all important to me.
Yeah.
And I never understood why I need to give up one to get the other, and I said, I will put in the work that is needed, that it takes.
Yeah.
And maybe I won't put in 100%, maybe I'll put in 200%.
Yeah.
But I don't want to live a life of compromise. That is how I processed it. And yes, that created a lot of, stress and all of those things, because when you're stretched, and there have been many times in life when I've been stretched. So that has created that multiple occasions, but I have gotten better over time to get the, to get a better, I don't think there's a work-life balance. I don't think that exists. I think you have to prioritize what is the need of the hour at that time, what needs your attention more. And I've set very clear boundaries. That was very important for me in any relationship. I think that sometimes when those boundaries are not clearly defined at the start, it becomes very difficult to add them on later.
Yes.
And then there's this thing of one person constantly giving, and in our ecosystem, generally it's the woman.
Yes.
So I think that clearly defined boundaries is to say, and having that clear line of communication, whether it's with your partner or your loved ones, whether it's my children, to say, I do this because I love you, but I also love what I do.
Yes.
Who I am
Yes.
is made up of many, many parts.
True. That's lovely. So, okay. So 3 very important points that you mentioned in this was, one is getting married late, which is such a big thing. The way the society is structured and saying that, no, this is when you should get married. It is so structured. So how difficult was that for you to break it through and said, no, I'm going to marry when I'm ready, when I feel when the person in front of me is the right person for me. So how do you know that? And how should women navigate that to not burden themselves with the norms of the society and say that, okay, you are an individual person, individual soul who was born here to have a purpose, and to bring that purpose to life which you are living. So that's one point. And also, so just we come to the next. What do you think about this?
I think these are very individual decisions. For me, I was very, maybe as a person, I'm perhaps a little nonconformist. External validation, good or bad, right or wrong, I don't know, but has never really mattered to me.
Yeah.
So I've always, I think I'm only answerable to myself. And that's how I've always been.
Yeah.
I think life is a journey,
Yeah.
and it is our journey. And perhaps the only thing in this that is truly ours
Yeah.
is our life.
Yes.
So for me, it was very, very clear that I didn't think it was fair to me or to the other person that I get married because the time was right, or, just as a tick box. It wasn't fair to either of us.
Yes.
So I got married at 35.
Yeah.
It felt, when it felt ready, when it felt right,
Yes.
it was right.
Yeah.
And but each person, it's very easy to make blanket statements, and I don't believe in doing that. I think each of us are in different ecosystems, and there is different level of reaction, adaptability, wanting to change, conform, not conform. So I think each person has to make that decision for themselves, because it's very easy to say things, right? I can only talk about the way I have lived my life. And for me, it did not work. And therefore, for me, there was no other way.
Yeah.
I wish I had found love earlier.
Yes.
If I had, I would have loved to get married earlier. But it didn't happen. It happened when it happened. And that's really been my life.
So going with the flow, it happened when it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that I think that's one thing also women should understand, and not sort of settle because there's a certain amount of pressure that's coming to them.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, each person has to make their own, we have to lie on the bed that we make.
Lovely, lovely. And you said there's nothing like work-life balance. When you're saying that, what exactly do you intend when you're saying, making the statement?
For the longest time, rather unsuccessfully, I tried to find that balance between, work can be all-consuming, especially entrepreneurship can be all-consuming.
Yes.
And equally, so can other things that life throws at you, family, social obligations, whatever else.
Yeah.
And so for the longest time, I always felt, and there are always these expectations, from work, from family, there are always expectations, right? And I think for a very long time, I tried very hard to find this playing field where everything sort of was balanced, was well balanced. I'm spending time at work, I'm spending time in family, and everybody's happy. And the reality was then nobody was happy. And neither was I happy. And it was mentally exhausting and emotionally exhausting, because there was a time when I felt that no matter what I do, it's not good enough because somebody is not happy, right? And then I said, look, the balance, the work has to be within us. The calm, the centering has to be within us, while life is happening outside in all its chaos and everything else that it throws our way. And so for me, I said, you know what? I can't find the balance. So let me work inwards on getting the centering right. Yeah. And then let me prioritize things the way they need to be prioritized at that given day, right? Because, for example, my mother was in hospital for 2 weeks. Yeah. It wasn't planned. I had work meetings. In fact, we were supposed to, meet earlier. Yes. But the priority for me at that time was being with my mother. So at that time, that took priority, right? Yeah. And that is the best way I have found to get that balance right. What is the need of the hour? What is more important at that moment?
Yeah.
And I think that has, again, I think that has worked really well for me, because it's also freed me from the weight of expectations. I now know that I do the best that I can. I hope it's good enough, but if it's not, this is the best I can do. And maybe it'll never be good enough. But this is me. And with all my weaknesses and flaws, and I'm a very flawed individual, this is my best.
Yeah, lovely. And when you say that, okay, we need to set boundaries in relationships, how do you go about doing that?
I think it's about people defining for themselves what is okay and what is not very early on. In terms of, say, for example, in marriage, it was very very early on. I think we had this conversation about the fact that both of us are driven, and we value what we do, and that is how we want to live our life. But we also want to live our life together.
Yes.
But one shouldn't come at the cost of the other. To be into a marriage should not mean that I have to give up on something which is a big part of who I am.
Yes.
And whether that is being financially independent or wanting to, to create something, that is also a very intrinsic part of who I am.
Yeah.
So I think it was very much about how the conversations have always been, this is important to me, this is important to you. How do we work together as a team to make sure, because after all, at the end of the day, marriage is it's teamwork.
Yes.
So how do we create an ecosystem at home that we both can follow things that are important to us and support each other in this journey? So that has been something, with it there've been ups and downs, but that's something we've really focused on right from the beginning.
Yeah. Are you saying that every single individual, a woman or a man, in a relationship should sit and talk about it? Is it like an open conversation? Is it like an alluded conversation? What's the best way to make this work between partners?
From the way I look at it, in my opinion, I think people need to have honest and open conversations to talk about how they feel, and to really have that. And it's always work in progress.
Yes.
It's not that you have one conversation, and it's not that I had one conversation and everything was, it was all hunky-dory and it was all rosy and bed of roses. It wasn't that. You have to work at it. You have to work at it every single day.
Yeah.
You have to, there are sometimes conflicts in diaries. There are conflicts in things that need done. But I think it's work in progress. And I think at the end of the day, there is an understanding that something is important to both of us. And if you want to figure it out, you will figure it out together.
Yes.
If you don't, if one's work becomes more, if one's work becomes more important than the others, then there's a conflict. But if both are equally important, then together you figure it out, right? Sometimes somebody takes a step back, somebody takes 10 steps forward, sometimes, you meet halfway, and sometimes you don't.
Yeah. So meet halfway, sometimes you don't, but it's like a continuous process where both the parties work together towards building something together. And of course, it's not a one-person journey. Tell me, Anuradha, relationships are a very important part of a person's existence. And relationships, which can be professional relationships, it can be personal relationships, a couple of things that one needs to work on, say every day or every week, towards building strong relationships, which are actually based on trust.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, there always is, it is the output is only as good as the input.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So creating that space of trust.
Yeah.
But I think, I have learned fairly recently, if I may say so,
Yeah.
that vulnerability
Yeah.
is a sign of strength.
Yeah.
I always thought it's a sign of weakness.
Brené Brown always spoke about this.
You know?
Slowly
You know?
now people are
Yeah.
agreeing, yeah.
And I have realized that it is, and I think that has helped me immensely, because I today I feel that I'm able to have a conversation and say, I wear my scars with a lot of pride. I think it's a reflection of a life well lived.
Yes.
And there are times when I have not known the answers, and I've taken a path maybe less traveled, and I've learned along the way.
Yeah.
And I could have done a lot of things better.
Yeah.
But I did the best I could at that time. And I think now being vulnerable and creating and being honest and open about my vulnerabilities, I think that is something that I wish I had known sooner.
Yeah.
That it is a sign of strength. It is not a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
But I know what I know now, and
Yeah.
thank God for that.
Yeah, yeah. Anuradha, you're running multiple companies. And I was also I came across this wellness team, which is there on your website. How do you interact? How do you strengthen relationships with the people who are employed in your company? And how do you ensure, because you're the leader, in terms of a leadership strength, how do you ensure that their mental health gets taken care of?
So I look at well-being holistically. And, I did psychology for 5 years, so I'm not sure whether
Yes.
there's a little aspect of that comes in, or maybe just life experiences, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But I think wellness or well-being has, it is not a one thing. It is the body, the mind, and the soul,
Yes,
right? It's unfortunate that for the longest time we have focused a lot on, and we've spoken about, the well-being of the soul and the body.
Yeah.
If I'm not feeling well, I can, no hesitation in sitting somewhere and saying, hey, I have this lower back pain and I need to see an, orthopedic or chiropractor or whatever it is, or I need to see the dentist. We really speak about those things and equally when we talk about the well-being of the soul, whether somebody says, I'm extremely religious, whatever religion they may follow, or somebody is extremely spiritual or not, we talk about it. I'm going here and I'm going to Tirupati, or I might be going somewhere, whatever. There is an openness to it.
Yeah.
But when it comes to mental, emotional well-being, it has been that little skeleton which is in a closet, and I don't understand why. Because you remove one part out of the three, it's incomplete.
Yeah.
Right? And I think, for me, I think emotional well-being is really what drives the mental, the physical well-being. It drives everything else. Yeah. But I think I'm so, it's so refreshing, and I'm so honored to be here today to have this conversation with you, because I think it is about time that we really start really openly talking about the fact that, firstly, there's nothing to be ashamed of. We don't talk about things when we want to hide them or when we feel ashamed about something.
Yeah.
This is our well-being.
Yeah.
So, I think open conversation, dialogue, more people talking about it. I think those things are, we need to be, it's an evolved society, an educated society, which need to talk about it like we do about everything else. It's about time.
Yeah, yeah. Running companies, entrepreneurship is one of the most difficult challenges, and we have been doing episodes on corporates and mental health and trying to understand that if we can get this to the leadership team in terms of mental health, and many people who are employees working in different companies have expressed that no, they are not able to talk freely about their mental health. Like we had somebody who had bipolar, but she was too scared to even talk about it, thinking that, okay, she's going to be sacked from her job. We are getting there in terms of talking about it, but actually the implementation of it is not there. A couple of things, you being an entrepreneur, the implementation of the mental health and well-being of employees, how can corporates ensure that? What are the things that they can bring to the table, or the guidelines that they can put out there to ensure that the employees are comfortable and that their emotional well-being gets taken care of?
I think it's a very good question. And I think there are some, corporates who have started doing that, but I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done. But I think, corporates is one part of it. I think as a whole, as a society, we have to, these things have to be normalized because they are normal.
Yeah.
So I think at the first level, it really needs to start at a society level, to say, hey, and to start talking about it. The more we talk about it, the more we normalize it, right? The more we realize that, and to create support groups, even in companies, to talk about it, to have maybe workshops, to have certain speakers come and talk about it, to encourage people. But people have to feel a sense of safety before they will talk about these things in a corporate environment. And I think the onus is on the leaders to create that sense of safety where people can talk about it without any fear of any consequences, right? So I think that is a responsibility that we carry on our shoulders, and I think it is much work needs to be done on that.
Tell me something, Anuradha, in terms of entrepreneurship is like, everybody quotes Elon Musk, you are sitting in the dark eating glasses, or, you're jumping off the cliff. What are the fears that you go through, of challenges that you go through, and how do you convert them into your strengths to keep going?
There are always challenges. There are micro challenges. There are macro challenges at the macro level. There are internal, there are external challenges. But I think I have learned to break it into things that I can control in my own limited capacity, and there are things that I cannot control. What is outward and what I cannot control is what it is, right? So then my focus, rather than getting diluted, shifts on what I can control, right? And that really is about, things like, there are always moments when you feel, like I said earlier, there is a sense of, you worry about you because really as the captain of the ship, you really set the direction. Where are we sailing? Right? And you don't want to get there and say, oh my God, I reached the wrong island. Right? So I think it is about having that belief in yourself, but equally, sometimes I worry about, do I need to, am I agile enough? As a company, can we read signals well? Are we flexible enough and quick enough to turn around if we need to, before the wind gets knocked out of our sails, right? So those are kind of things, there are environments, economic cycles, how will the team get impacted? During COVID, by the grace of God, we did not let go of any single person in the company, and those were very tough times. But I think it really is about, am I doing right by the people that who are in the team, because then they are responsible for their family members and, all of those things. So I think there are a lot of things to think about. There are always some sleepless nights. But I think in the end, it is all about the intent. And if the intent is right, then things eventually fall into place. You go through your own learnings, but that's life, right?
Yeah. And entrepreneurial mindset, there's something which I've constantly sort of reading a lot of people, trying to understand that your mindset plays a tremendous role in your life. So what is your mindset? Do you set it up as an entrepreneur? How do you go about defining that mindset that might eventually define the kind of work that you're doing, your speed, your progress, the kind of people that you're meeting? Do you believe in that?
I do.
Yeah.
I think there is I think entrepreneurs are generally risk takers. It is very rare that you will have an entrepreneur who's risk averse.
Yeah.
Because it's the other end of the spectrum, and that is why you need to have people in the company, like maybe your CFO or other people who are the risk averse people to get you that balance. Because as an entrepreneur, you're like, I can do this.
Yes.
Sometimes foolishly so.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
So I think that balance in your team is really important. But I think that is a mindset. Somebody who is risk averse, generally going down the entrepreneurial sort of route is perhaps not the best decision, right? And I think there has to be a deep sense of being able to be self-motivated.
Yeah.
So it just, but also it really is about, do you want to be leading a team? Do you want to take the risks? Do you want to create something? And if you do, is it short term, long term? You have to figure out what are the drivers of your business.
Yeah.
What are the foundational pillars? And identify that. So I think there is a lot of, and therefore I think the emotional well-being of the person at the helm, there has to be a very strong focus on that. And that's something that I was in Austria a few weeks ago in a health in a health resort, and for 2 weeks, focusing a lot on its well-being, whether it's physical or mental or emotional or whatever it is, right? And 3 months before that, I went to Peru on a trip. So I think, I'd really try and carve out some time where I need to decompose. I need to sort of just de-stress. I need to, it's my me time, right? And I've realized that me time is really, really important for my mental well-being. And it's not, my mental well-being is just not my mental well-being. It's also the well-being of my family. You cannot pour from an empty well. Right? So for me, there's been a very conscious focus on, because that is how I work. I need to recharge. I need to recharge. I need some time away. I need to introspect. I just need to be. And then I come back recharged and ready to be able to give, to contribute meaningfully, whether it's family or work or wherever. And I think, a lot of times we don't prioritize ourselves. It's almost seen in many ways, especially when women do it. It's almost seen like being selfish or being self-centered. But like you're flying, and the first thing they say, the first lesson is that if this plane is going down, you put the oxygen on yourself, right? Because you have to first survive to be able to help anybody else. So I think just that prioritizing yourself, especially as women, I think that is something that we don't do enough of, and that's something I've focused on a lot more in the last 2 years. There are many times when my husband has held fort, and I have gone on these me trips, and he doesn't need to do that because that's not how he functions. But equally, he recognizes that's how I function. So he says, "Hey, you go, you do your thing, re-energize, come back, and we'll look forward to you, coming back. Till then, I'm enjoying this time with the children." So
Also, Anuradha, for every human being, but also specifically for an entrepreneur. We've been talking a lot about values. Your values define you. You make decisions on your from the values that you put out there for your own self. Do you pay attention to that? Are they important to you? And what are the kind of values that you are placing importance to when you're making decisions that I feel equally impact your well-being?
I think if you're true to yourself, and if you stay true to yourself, your well-being is well taken care of. So as long as you have to define the values, it could be integrity, it could be transparency, it could be whatever it is.
Yes.
But as long as you are true to your value system, your mental well-being is fine.
Yeah. That's lovely. So just for our listeners, if they do not know how to figure out their values, how do you figure out your values out there? How do you put it on paper? How do you define it for yourself?
I think, firstly, nobody else can define your values.
Yes.
It's only you who can figure out what your values are.
Yeah.
And I think the only way to do that is introspection.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to well-being.
Yeah.
I think there is a lot of, I believe introspection and well-being are very intrinsically connected.
Yeah.
The more we look within, the more we get a lot of our answers from there.
Yeah.
So I think our value systems, what resonates with us, those are all things that we need to figure out. Each of us need to figure out for ourselves. And then we just need to have the strength to, to
Stand by them.
stand by those and imbibe those.
Yeah.
And for the most part, sometimes there may be some deviations. There always are, we as human beings, those. But I think just being aligned to your value systems, once you're on the right path, then you're good. But we have to figure it out ourselves. It's all inside.
Yeah.
We just have to get it. We just have to get it out from there.
Yes. And how do you foresee your future, Anuradha, in terms of an entrepreneur, in terms of your family, as a wife, as a mother? Where do you see yourself heading? Say, do you plan it out, or do you sort of keep it as a flow? Let's see what happens.
If you had asked me this question 30 years ago, I would have said I've got my life all planned out. It's all done. It's good.
Yeah.
If you ask me today, I think that was the foolish me.
Yeah.
And life has its own plans.
Yes.
So today my answer would be I go with the flow. Of course, there are certain broad things that you put together,
Like a map,
as a framework.
Yeah.
But within that framework, there is always that flexibility to maneuver as and when is required, right? Because, there are so many lives together in that framework.
Yeah.
The decision one life makes, how that impacts somebody else, and those things are always changing, right? So I think within that, there is always, and I think that's the beauty of life, right? That everything is not slotted in.
Yeah. Has there been a certain journey of yours that's personal, related to mental health? Any anecdotes that you would like to share? Because I believe you have gone through personal losses. So is this something that you would like to put it out there?
Yes, that's true. I think, I have gone through personal loss. And I think what happens in the well-being or, the grieving process is that there is this whole cycle, right? And I think we have to we have to give ourselves the time to heal. And a lot of times society, well-wishers even, will say, hey, it's been X amount of time. But I think only the person who has experienced loss knows how they feel. And whether they feel that amount of time has happened or they feel it was just like yesterday. Because loss always brings with it, life never goes back to normal. You start living a new normal. And each person reacts to that very differently. And I think it's very important for us to give ourselves the time to heal and not put a timeline to it. I think that's really important. In the last few years, my son has been diagnosed with ADHD. And that is something that I felt when he was very little, that, we need to have this looked into. But, the general thing always is, he's a young boy, they're always sort of running around and all. And I said, I don't think it is that. And I think I think I can help him. And if I can help him, why will I not help him?
Yeah.
Why should I not get this investigated? Why should I not look into it? Why should I not find out more? You know, it's not his weight to carry. It is not a weight. If we need to, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And then we did. And then, he has very high IQ, which also makes it he zones out very quickly.
Yeah.
Because he picks things up very quickly and then he's bored and he moves on.
Yeah.
And that has been a challenge even as a family.
Yeah.
I don't remember the first 7 years where we ever sat down at a meal and had one meal together because he was always spinning in his head.
Yeah.
And I think that has been, and my husband comes from a slightly different background where there is not that much perhaps conversation of everything is fine, and in everything, because in the olden days, I don't think that it's new. It's, while the stresses of this generation may be different, but the stresses of the last generation were different in their own way and equally challenging.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't think the awareness was there earlier.
Yeah.
So that has been, as a family, my daughter is still very young to figure out, but I do speak to my son, and he, I take him for occupational therapy, and I tell him that, this is your feelings friend. And I remember going to pick him up from school. He's 7 years old. I picked him up from school, and I met his friend, and he said, "You have come to, Ishan's going to his feelings friend?" I said, "Yes." And I said, Ishan, at some time in our lives, we all need help with our feelings.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of you that, you're doing this, but know that you're not doing it alone. You and me both are doing this together.
Yeah.
We're in this together.
Yeah.
And his response to me was just give me a hug. But that's all I needed.
Yeah. Lovely. Lovely. Thank you so much, Anuradha. I think there's so much to learn from this episode. I hope the listeners really enjoy this episode and really absorb what we have just spoken about and your personal journey through life, and so much of learnings there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.